Imagine a president who travels to a remote village in secret. No press, no cameras, no security parade. Just silence. And when he arrives, he finds a coffin waiting for him. On its surface is painted a name. His name. Is it a threat? A prophecy? Or has a ghost from the past finally returned for justice? The scorching African sun beat down mercilessly as the presidential convoy rumbled down the dusty back roads of the countryside. President Ibrahim Traoré, accompanied only by his most trusted guards, had made an unannounced decision that morning to visit one of the nation's poorest, most forgotten villages. "If you want to know your people," he had told his staff earlier, "you must see them without warning." But as the vehicles rolled closer to the village, an eerie stillness took hold. Too quiet, too empty. There were no curious children running to greet them, no elders standing at the roadside. It was as if the village had stopped breathing. The soldiers exchanged wary glances, weapons at the ready, eyes scanning every corner. When the president stepped out of his SUV, only one man approached, hunched and weathered. The old man's cloudy eyes stared straight into Traoré's without a word of greeting or gesture of respect. And then he spoke. Just one sentence. "We've been expecting you." Traoré narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean? Who told you I was coming?" The old man began to walk. "You weren't the only one brought here." Without explaining further, he led the way, his slow steps guiding them between the cracked huts and overgrown paths of a nearly forgotten village. They stopped in front of a broken-down church. The man opened the creaking wooden doors, revealing a space shrouded in stillness. At the center stood a plain wooden coffin, covered in a black cloth, with dried wildflowers scattered across it. But what made every heartbeat stop me was what was written, bold, clear and deliberate, across its surface in white paint. Ibrahim Traoré. The president froze. A chill ran down his spine. His knees buckled slightly, instinctively reacting to a fear older than logic. His guards shifted into position, hands near their weapons, but no one dared move. And in that moment, a single thought burned itself into everyone's mind. Was this a prophecy or a warning before an execution? The chill inside the old church was more than just air. It gripped their bones. The soldiers instantly formed a defensive perimeter. One shouted, "This could be a trap. We need to get out." But President Traoré didn't move. It was as if his feet were bolted to the floor. His eyes stayed locked on the coffin, on the name painted in trembling white strokes. To see his own name on a burial box, it struck a fear deeper than any threat a weapon could deliver. The old man still stood tall, unmoving. That coffin was found right here, 3 mornings ago, at the break of dawn. No one brought it, no one wrote the name, but everyone saw it. Traoré's lips parted. "Everyone?" "The whole village," the old man said. But no one dared to speak. Suddenly a piercing scream split the silence outside. The guards rushed out with their rifles raised. Near a withered peanut tree beside the church, an elderly woman in tattered clothes was on her knees, pounding the dry earth with her fists. Her eyes seemed fixed on another realm, but her voice echoed through this one. "The president has come, but he is too late. The spirits have already decided." Villagers watched from a distance, too afraid to step forward. The woman's name was Aminata. She had been banished from the village 40 years ago, labeled as insane, but over time, every one of her prophecies had come true. That day, people stopped seeing her as a madwoman and began to see her as someone who had seen too much. Traoré approached her slowly. His soldiers held back. "Tell me," he said softly, "what do you know?" Aminata lifted her gaze to the sky, then studied the president from head to toe. Her voice came like a whisper, but it struck like thunder. "3 signs were sent to you. 2 have already come. The 3rd arrives tonight." The president froze. His heart thudded in his ears. He turned back toward the coffin. 3 signs? What were the first 2? What would the 3rd be? And most terrifying of all, was there still time to stop it? That night, a heavy darkness wrapped around the village like a black veil. Wind battered the tin roofs, but inside the president's heart, a storm was raging louder. 2 signs have already come, Aminata had said. But what were they? And more importantly, what would the 3rd be? In a dim wooden hut behind the old church, President Traoré sat alone, drowning in thoughts of a past he'd never dared to confront. Growing up, He had known almost nothing about his father. His mother always brushed off his questions with the same line, "He left when you were small." And yet that absence had grown inside him like a silent void. Now that void had taken the shape of a coffin, with his name carved into it. The door creaked open. Aminata stepped in, holding something in her wrinkled hands, a tattered, yellowed notebook. "This," she said softly, "belonged to your father." Traoré's hands trembled as he opened it. On the first page, a message was scrawled, "If my son ever returns to this village, tell him everything, because those who run from the past eventually vanish in its shadow." As he turned the pages, one line struck him like lightning. "The spirits gave me 3 signs. I ignored the first. I laughed at the second. The third showed me my end." Traoré slowly closed the notebook. His heart was racing. This prophecy, this strange warning, had once been sent to his father too. And his father had died in this very village, inside a coffin with his name on it. Suddenly, a strange humming sound interrupted his thoughts. He stepped outside. In the village square, dozens of children knelt silently on the ground, all staring up at the sky. Their eyes gleamed like glass. In the center stood a little girl, whispering a chilling phrase, "If the coffin is empty, then the spirit is not." At that exact moment, the lid of the coffin in the church flung open by itself. No one emerged, but it wasn't empty either. Traoré narrowed his eyes. There was something, a faint shimmer, like smoke made of silk, rising from the coffin. A grey shadow flickering like it was breathing. Something alive, or something that had once been. The president stepped back. His past was no longer just a memory. It had taken form. It was real. It was waiting. The grey shadow in the coffin pulsed gently, coiling like a breath woven from darkness. President Traoré instinctively stepped back. No sound came from his soldiers, not a word from the villagers. Everyone stood frozen, eyes locked on the coffin, hearts pounding like drums in their throats. Time itself seemed to pause. Aminata approached and gently grasped the president's arm. In a whisper, she said, "Don't be afraid. This isn't just a form. It's the body of an unanswered past." Traoré's gaze remained fixed on the moving shadow. "What does that mean?" he asked, voice hoarse. The woman looked up at the night sky. "This village has learned to live with its sins, but your family's sin was never spoken. This shadow, it isn't just your father's. It's a burden you've carried too." The president lowered his head. He remembered the day his mother died under mysterious illness. For the first time, he questioned why his father had disappeared. And now, all of it was returning, no longer as memory, but as judgment. Suddenly, the old church bell began to ring on its own. Each strike cut through the sky like thunder. The shadow stirred again. It didn't rise from the coffin, but it changed shape. Slowly, it began to form a human figure. And then, it became clear. It was a man who looked like Traoré, but older, weary, haunted. The soldiers reached for their weapons, but the president raised his hand. "No, that's me," gasps echoed. The shadowy figure opened his mouth. Its voice, deep, tired, echoed like a memory long buried. "Your story is following the path of mine. You're repeating my mistakes, son." The president froze. The voice, it was unmistakable. It sounded exactly like the faded memory of his father's voice. Aminata turned to him. "This is the moment the past speaks. You will either follow its fate or break the chain." Traoré stepped forward, trembling. "How do I break it?" he asked. Her reply was sharp as a blade. "Forgive, accept, and above all, listen to your own family." Suddenly a voice rose from behind him. Traoré turned. It was his wife. Tears in her eyes, but her face resolute. "I told you years ago not to trust certain men in your army, but you silenced me." In that moment, Traoré realized the truth. The coffin, the shadow, the prophecy, they were all leading to this choice. And as the night grew even darker, he understood. The real storm wasn't above. It was within him. 4:47 a.m. The sky was still cloaked in darkness, but the silence in the village now held a different meaning. Something had shifted, or perhaps something had decided to shift. President Ibrahim Traoré stood motionless before the coffin in the village square. The shadowy figure had slowly faded into nothingness, but the question it left behind echoed in his mind. Will you repeat the mistakes? or release the pest. Behind him, his soldiers remained silent, none daring to influence his next move. Beside him stood his wife, her eyes filled with pain, but her stance still carrying hope. Traoré turned to Aminata. "I'm ready," he said calmly. The old woman nodded and pulled from her pocket a weathered charm wrapped in red thread. "Your father reached this point too," she whispered, "but he lacked the courage. Your test is not the same, it's greater, because now a nation is watching." The president took the charm into his hands. Just then, movement stirred at the far end of the square. A soldier stepped forward, pale, avoiding eye contact. Aminata's voice cut through the stillness. "And here comes your final test. This man was one of those sent to betray you." The entire village held its breath. Traoré slowly walked toward him. "What's your name?" he asked. The soldier trembled. "Jean, sir," he replied. Traoré took another step. "Why?" Jean's eyes filled with tears. "They threatened my family. It was either poison you or lose them forever." Silence fell. His wife said nothing. Aminata remained still. All eyes were on the president. His voice cracked, but it did not waver. "Today, I'm not continuing a curse. I'm breaking a chain." He took Jean's weapon and gently placed it on the ground. Then he embraced him. "You have the right to be forgiven, but now, will you truly fight to protect this land?" Jean dropped to his knees. "Yes, sir." At that moment, the church bell rang again. But this time it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. The morning sun, for the first time in years, touched the ground where the coffin had been. There was nothing there now, just dry earth and the trace of a new beginning. Traoré turned to face the people. "This village will become the new heart of this country," he declared, "and the wounds of the past will become the strength of our future." Applause broke out. Children ran. His wife took his hand, and Aminata simply smiled, because she knew the curse was lifted, and from its ashes something greater had risen.